of the facilitators of the workshop today.
And I am America Meneses. I am also a master's level therapist at the Village of Hoffman Estates. And thank you all for joining us today.
Great. Welcome to both of you. I'm Annie. I'm the adult program coordinator here at the Schaumburg Library. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat or use the Q&A box and we'll address them at the end, or they've got a little section where we'll have opportunity to discuss and give feedback. So without further ado, I'm going to let them take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
Yeah, so today we have quite a few things we want to go over with you guys. So to kind of start off today, we wanted to do an activity just to kind of ground ourselves and get ourselves relaxed and kind of in the mindset for this presentation. Over the course of this workshop, we'll just talk about, what stress is, what it looks like, and some strategies to kind of help ourselves cope with it. And have a little video at the end where Dr. Joe does some of these techniques and shows us how to do them. And like it was mentioned before, we'll try and do some Q&A at the end if you guys have questions.
Okay, so I'm going to hope this works. We practiced this before, so I'm hoping it still works the same. So this is just a very quick mindful breathing exercise to kind of get us grounded into the space before we start the full-on presentation. So feel free to join in.
Mindful breathing. Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lungs, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
Oh.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that exercise. So that's just one example of a way that you can sort of cope and relax when you're feeling stressed. We'll talk a little bit more about some other strategies as well as more about breathing later in this presentation. But first, we really wanted to talk about what is stress. So when someone says they're stressed, it's usually pretty easy for us to understand what they mean. But sometimes stress can look different for everyone and they can say it in different ways. And so some ways that it can be said are with emotional, physical terms or with their thoughts. So when people are feeling stress emotionally, you can say you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious or even frustrated. Whereas physically, people might say things like they have stomach aches or feel dizzy, headaches, or even have trouble breathing. Then there's our thoughts. So someone could say maybe they're overthinking or they notice they're blinking out. I'm just having trouble remembering things. It can even just be us having a negative state of mind. So stress is one of those words that doesn't have one single definition, but stress can sort of be looked at as the brain's response to any kind of demand. So many things can trigger this response for us, and that's usually change. So change can be positive or negative, and it can be real or perceived. With stress, it can be reoccurring, it can be short term, and it can be long term. And so this can include things like commuting to and from school or work every day, traveling, or even moving to another home. Changes can be mild, so it can be like winning a race or watching a scary movie or even riding a roller coaster. Or changes can be major, such as getting married or going through a divorce. And then there's the extreme end of things. So that could be, violence or even going through a traumatic event. So because there is no true definition, it can be kind of hard to measure stress sometimes. But one common way people look at it is physical, mental, or emotional strain or tension. Essentially, stress is the body's 911 system. It's just alerting us that something is going on. And so it's a lot to do with our perception. So what I mean by that is that the same event, it could be exciting and pleasurable for one person, whereas for someone else, it can be very stressful. And so essentially, stress is how our body responds to pressures, responsibilities, and threats. And so in response, we try to make adjustments to, handle the stress.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about the types of stress, and there are many forms of stress. The first one is physical stress. So many of us might have some physical trauma or physical condition that might be causing us stress. We might also have some type of illness that kind of exacerbates a little bit of our stress, and also the effects of substance use. Another common type of stress is psychological stress. So this can include anything from emotional, cognitive, and perceptual stress. So emotional being angry, overwhelmed, frustrated, or any other type of emotion that we might express and feel. Cognitively, we might experience that constant worry of what the stressor might be, whether it's a responsibility, a threat, job loss, whatever it might be. And then perceptual is, do we have the ability, or actually do we perceive that we have the ability to control that stressor that's in front of us? Whether it's a real perception or a skewed perception of our ability to control. There's also psychosocial stress. So this can be anything with interpersonal relationships. So it could be having a argument with a significant other or a coworker, a friend, other family member, or even your children. This might also feel like as if you're not having any social support from these individuals, which can trickle down into other forms of stress. So maybe financial concerns or marital concerns. So on and so forth. There's also psychospiritual stress. And what that means is we might experience a certain type of crisis or situation or experience that might not align with our values, with our morals, or our principles in a certain situation. And that misalignment with our own values and principles and morals might cause us some type of distress or any other additional stressor, such as emotional stress, just because of that misalignment. So the stages of stress. Generally, this is also known as the general adaptation syndrome. And what this pretty much is, it's a three-step process on how our bodies respond to that initial threat or that stressor in front of us. So the first stage is the alarm reaction, or sometimes we can also see it as like that initial shock that we get from that stressor. And what our bodies end up doing is we perceive the stress. So our body takes in that stressor. Our body decides, okay, is this something that I have to physically fight, or am I going to flee the situation, or am I gonna kind of freeze in that situation because I don't know what to do? And regardless of which one it might be, our body kind of tells us how we're going to respond. And I'm sure with all of us that we've all encountered some form of stress at any point in our lives, we tend to have this increased heart rate where we start breathing really fast. Also, we start getting these like sweaty, cold, clammy hands. And that's just our body's response to that stressor. And also within this alarm reaction stage, our bodies will also release a type of hormone. And that hormone that ends up being released is to give us that boost of adrenaline, that boost of energy that we need to kind of finish up this task that's in front of us. This follows the second stage, so resistance. And this is when our body continues to process our environment as stressful, and sometimes we need to be on high alert. So we kind of have to feel out what our environment feels like. And sometimes with this, I'm going to move my image here. Sometimes with this second stage, our body will also give us certain responses in addition to the heart rate and sweaty hands. Our bodies and how we respond will be either we might feel frustrated, we might feel irritable, we might not be able to focus or concentrate the way we used to when we're not in a stressful situation. And then this leads into the third stage, which is called exhaustion. And this primarily is the end of that stressor. So for instance, if it is more long-term stress, we might feel physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausted because of that really chronic and stressful situation. In this phase, we might have an emotional breakdown where too much of that stress is really building and we can no longer hold it. So we feel the need to just break down, and we might cry, and that's okay. We might also feel burnt out because of that just overwhelming stress, where we feel like we are physically tired, we can't do anything anymore, we're just exhausted. Is pretty much kind of the end of that stage.
So like I mentioned earlier, stress has many names to it, and one of those is anxiety. And so along with looking at stress in those stages that America talked about, we can also look at stress and anxiety as a cycle. And so how that sort of works is that it kind of kicks off with us having a situation or something that causes us to have anxiety or stress. And so we get these symptoms, and they can look different for each of us, but they cause us to feel uncomfortable. And so this is where those feelings of, worry or the sweating that America was talking about can happen. And so when we're put in these uncomfortable and stressful situations, we try to protect ourselves. And so we can do that by trying to avoid the situation that made us anxious. And so some things could be, procrastinating on a task that we know is going to be challenging, or wanting to avoid or skip class or work because we have a presentation that we're worried to give. And so because we do this avoidance when we feel anxious, this can have short-term and long-term effects. So when we avoid in the moment, it gives us that short-term relief. Those symptoms go away and we feel a little bit better, but essentially it's only temporary. It's not a fix. And so because we do this, avoidance or pattern of avoidance when we feel anxious, this trains our brain to learn that, when I feel anxious, I'm going to avoid and that I need to avoid this situation. And over time, it can make the symptoms even stronger when we get put back into a similar situation, and it just teaches us even more to avoid and can lead to even more significant avoidance. So, like the example of wanting to avoid work for the day, we could start, avoiding work multiple days at a time then.
Okay, so let's talk about, is stress really bad? Some people might say, I'm always stressed and I'm fine. That might be true. Other people might say the opposite. I'm constantly stressed and I have all these other problems. I don't know what to do. So let me talk about the two different types of stress more in depth. So we have positive stress, which some people might know as eustress. But we also have the flip side, where it is too much to handle and this causes distress. That's the other part. So let's start with eustress. Eustress is that positive stress. Sometimes with positive stress, it can be very motivational in nature. It's often short term, so it's not long term. It can last maybe a couple hours or the full day, maybe a few days out of the week, but it's very short term. Eustress also feels very energizing, very exciting, kind of like in the moment where you feel excited to complete a task, you feel motivated. And typically with eustress or positive stress, our performance tends to be at the highest. And we do fairly well. We get things completed on time. We might even have additional time left over for other activities. But typically with eustress, our performance is at its highest. Now on the flip side, distress. Distress, as Taylor had mentioned with the cycle of anxiety, can cause anxiety or other emotional concerns. With distress, this could be short-term or long-term. And this could also be known as acute stress or more chronic stress. It often feels very unpleasant. No one likes to feel that type of stress, especially if it can cause us anxiety or other emotional symptoms. And typically also with distress, we are at our lowest in performance. Like I mentioned before, we might not have the energy to do it. We might procrastinate, like Taylor mentioned. So I want to talk a little bit about this image on the right-hand side of this slide, the stress performance curve. Other people might know it as the Yerkes-Dodson curve. It also goes by that name as well. So let me point your attention really quick to this green side, towards all the way to the left. So this is when we have absolutely little to no stress. In this state, we might feel very relaxed, very laid back. And at least for me, I know when I am very laid back, I don't get anything done because I think I have plenty of time to do it later on in the day, and I end up not doing it. So we don't want to be not stressed or have little to no stress. But on the flip side, if we look all the way to the right-hand side on this bright red side with the angry face, we have too much stress that can cause us to feel anxiety, maybe some anger because we can't get it done on time, maybe even some panic where we feel like we're overly rushed to get things done at a certain deadline. This can also lead into us breaking down, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, where we just feel we've met our threshold where we're way too high with stress and we're gonna break down and cry because it's too much to handle. This also leads into burnout, where we feel like we are super exhausted, that we can't do anything anymore, and we just need to not do anything, not talk to anybody. So that's also not good. That's too much to handle. We want to be somewhere in the middle. right? Where it's like this yellow, orangey kind of color, where we have a little bit of stress and we perform at our highest, right? So it's that positive stress, again, with the eustress. We want to be motivated. We want to have our performance at its highest. Take, for example, football players or sports players when they're in a game. They might feel a little bit of stress because they want to win the game. They might have their coach telling them, do this, do that. And yes, they're under stress, but at the same time, it's very exciting. It's invigorating for them. So they're going to try and perform at their highest. So that's just a little bit of an example. Now, moving into common stressors. So we all know what's going on in the world right now. COVID is happening. So that is one environmental stressor. And because COVID is kind of an overarching theme right now, a lot of other stressors can kind of come underneath that. So for instance, employment changes. That has been a common theme right now with COVID, and not even with COVID, but just in general also. Financial changes are a common stressor, and more so now. Medical concerns or the death or an illness of a loved one or a friend, coworker. Separately from COVID, we can also experience other stressors like legal concerns, medical concerns in general, changes in relationships. So are we getting a divorce? Are we separating from our significant other? Even for kids too, transitioning into maybe a new neighborhood is another type of stressor for kids predominantly. Going from middle school to high school, stuff of that nature. And some of the symptoms that we might experience because of different types of stressors, we might have headaches or migraines that are very painful. We might feel fatigue. We might feel muscle tension in the back of our neck, or maybe eye twitches. I know I've experienced that before. Skin irritations where you might start breaking out. Or we might have some other symptoms such as constantly worrying or overthinking. We might not be able to come up with a decision as quickly as before because now we have to really think. We might get distracted, so on and so forth. Behaviorally, we might overeat or undereat, oversleep or undersleep. We might be drinking more to kind of cope with that stress. We might also feel a bit more irritable with other people. We might feel, loss of confidence, more fussy, things of that nature. So it definitely affects different parts of our body, not just physical body, but emotional, mind, and behaviors.
So like America was saying, stress can affect all different aspects of our life and can show in different ways, like in our body, in our mind, in our behavior. And one of those that you mentioned was sleep. And sleep is so important because sleep is our time for our body to rest, to heal and stay healthy. And if we're having problems with our sleep, that can lead to illness and other emotional and physical problems as well. So we wanted to touch on sleep hygiene. And so sleep hygiene simply is just a term used for good sleeping habits. And so with this topic, there's been a lot of research that's actually been done to look into tips that are consistently shown to help and can even have long-term effects in helping with sleep difficulties. And so there are quite a few medications out there used to treat insomnia, but those tend to only be a short-term fix. And so ongoing use or even using medication should be talked with a physician just to see if it's appropriate for you. But the tips we're going to talk about are things that you can either do in conjunction with medication or on their own that could hopefully help improve your sleep quality. So there are quite a few, and so we're just going to kind of go over them and what each of them sort of means. So when we say get regular, it's one of the best ways to train your body. Essentially, you're trying to make sure you're getting up and going to bed at the same time every day. So this includes the weekends and even your days off. This puts your body into a rhythm and sort of trains it when it's time to sleep and when it's time to be active, and kind of alerts it to when you should be doing things. You're also going to want to sleep when you're sleepy. So only try to sleep when you actually feel tired instead of just laying in bed awake. And so this goes into the next one, which is get up and try again. So if you're laying in bed and you aren't able to sleep after about 20 minutes or even more, get up and do something that's calming or even something that may seem boring. Basically, you just want to make sure you're not reactivating your brain, because if you go ahead and get up and do something that stimulates it, it's going to make it even harder when you go back and try to go to sleep. So get up and do something that's sort of relaxing for you. Also, before bed, you want to avoid caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol up to 4 to 6 hours before sleeping. All of those are, or specifically caffeine and nicotine, are stimulants, so that's going to activate your brain and make it difficult to fall asleep when you do. With alcohol, some people do say it helps them feel sleepy and feel tired, but in actuality, it decreases the quality of sleep. So you're more likely to sleep poorly if you're drinking alcohol close to bed. Then there is bed is for sleeping. And so I know I'm guilty of this as well, but bed should just be for sleeping and sex. So that means we aren't looking at our phones, we aren't watching TV, we're not reading in bed, because it teaches our brain that bed is meant for more than just sleeping. So it can make it even more difficult when we try to lay down and go to bed when our brain thinks we should be doing other things. Another thing we want to do is avoid napping. It just helps us keep with that rhythm and maintain our sleep cycle. If you do have to sleep or take a nap, make sure it is less than an hour and before 3 p.m. It just helps, again, with keeping our body regulated and making sure we're able to fall asleep later at night. You also can benefit for having a sleep ritual. So just have a bedtime routine. So some people will do stretching before they go to bed, a breathing exercise like we did in the beginning, or even just sitting with a cup of tea that's not caffeinated. Just something to sort of tell your body that you're getting ready for bed and it's time for sleep.
Okay, so a few more that I'll talk about is bath time. Some people love to have a nice warm bath to kind of relax the muscles, especially if you have like muscle tension from so much stress that I talked about before. Another one is no clock watching. I know I am also very, very much guilty of this. I will sleep with my phone either underneath my pillow or right next to me on my nightstand. And I will constantly also look at my phone to see what time it is, how long I've been awake. So that's also a not good. So some of the things that could be done is, maybe put your phone on the opposite side of the bedroom. So that way you don't see the clock and you're not, picking up your phone right next to you to look at the time. Another helpful tip is to use a sleep diary. Some people, they will track the amount of time that they do take a nap a couple of days a week or every day of the week, right? It's also helpful to track what time you wake up, what time you go to sleep. If you wake up at night for whatever reason, either to go to the bathroom or anything like that, you can also track that as well. Some exercise. I know Taylor mentioned this as well. Some light exercise to kind of get your body tired, especially if you're not tired, you want to get up and try again. So exercise would be a great way to get back into sleeping. Eating right is another one. So kind of eating a good diet, try to avoid anything really heavy at night to kind of help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep. The right space. So don't want to have too many pillows on your bed, for instance, that or anything that might kind of get you to wake up for whatever reason. And then last but not least, keep daytime routine the same. So what this means is just no matter what's going on, try to do the same thing every day during waking hours, right? Try to still keep that same routine of washing the dishes, for instance, before going to bed or taking a shower before going to bed. So try to not avoid certain things that are pretty the same day-to-day routine.
So beyond just, sleep hygiene and our sleep habits, we did want to go over some other coping skills and coping techniques that you can use on an everyday basis. And so with coping techniques, we can have healthy and unhealthy coping skills that we use. So when we look at things that we may do to help us feel better and to handle the stress, some that are unhealthy, or kind of what America talked about, substance use. So, drinking or smoking, our eating habits. So when we over or under eat, when we procrastinate to just kind of avoid that stress, or even, in some cases, we take out our stress on others. So this is where we get that lashing out and those outbursts that America talked about. So one skill we can try to remember when thinking about how we can kind of cope with stress are the 4 A's, which are avoid, alter, adapt, and accept. So avoid is avoid unnecessary stress. So this is learning to say no. It can be difficult, but if we know taking on more stuff is going to cause us more stress, we need to learn to start being okay with saying no, to put ourselves first. You also want to avoid people who cause you stress. You want to also try and take control of your environment. Another thing to do in this is to avoid topics that can cause stress or will cause the conversation between you and someone else to become stressful. Then there's alter. So it means alter the situation. So part of this is expressing your feelings when you're in the moment instead of bottling them up. So when we keep our emotions inside, it just builds and builds and builds until we have that sort of situation that causes us to have that tipping point. And again, that's where we get those outbursts or just that sort of unpredictability in our behavior. So again, it's so important to just express our feelings versus bottling them up. You also want to try to compromise, be more assertive if you can, and manage your time as best as you can. With adapt, it's adapt the stressor. So try to reframe the problem. And so what we mean by reframe is that, we could be in a negative mindset when we are stressed. So we can kind of tend to think the worst in those situations. So reframing just means how can we look at the positives of the situation? How can I keep myself from going to that negative space? And one way to do that is trying to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Sometimes when we're stressed, we're very focused on what we're feeling in that moment, and that's when we can feel overwhelmed. When we sort of take that second to breathe and step back and look at the bigger picture, that can help us relax. Then last is accept. So accept the things that you can't change. And so part of this is don't try to control the uncontrollable. So right now we are in the pandemic, and so there are a lot of things that are out of our control right now. And so with this, it's learning to accept that, this is a situation that we're in, but there are things that are still within our control. So, getting up in the morning, making our breakfast, and just kind of how we face the day are all still in our control, even if there's a whole bunch of other things that aren't. We can look at the upside, again, share our feelings, and also part of accepting is learning to forgive. So a couple other strategies to sort of help with stress is to make time for fun and relaxation. So we can also think of this as self-care. So really just setting aside time to do something that is relaxing for you. So for some, that can be connecting with others, just something that you can find enjoyable. So things like going for a walk, listening to music, or even writing in a journal can all be very helpful and relaxing. It's going to be based on, what you find most relaxing and helpful for you. Also, we sort of touched on this, but adopting a healthy lifestyle. So exercise and making sure we're eating good foods for our body and trying to avoid that, caffeine and sugar and other substances. And again, sleep is so important. and making sure we're getting those 7 to 8 hours and giving our body the time to rest and heal. And so part of having a healthy diet or healthy lifestyle is making sure we're increasing some of those habits that we've touched on. So again, like the exercise, the sleep, that could be stretching, or even just staying connected to our social support system. So like we showed in the beginning, one of the techniques is breathing. And so some other ones include abdominal breathing, but there's also progressive muscle relaxation. And that kind of involves the tightening and loosening of muscles. And there are lots of guided versions out there as well, and readings. And so some other things that are considered relaxing can be meditation, stretching, or even doing visualizations. So what relaxation really gets at is this idea of mindfulness. And mindfulness is simply practice of purposely focusing your attention on the present moment. So we're not thinking about what happened earlier in the day or what's going to happen later. We're just really sitting with ourselves in the moment and just kind of accepting what is happening and what we're feeling without judgment. And so when we practice mindfulness, it can help improve our well-being, our physical health, and our mental health. And some of these techniques are, just basic mindfulness meditation. There's body sensation, there are sensory techniques, and it also just sitting and recognizing our emotions and what we're feeling in that moment. So like we mentioned in the beginning, we did find this demonstration by Dr. Jo. She goes ahead and demonstrates different types of breathing techniques. And so there's box breathing, and then there is diaphragmic breathing, which is also known as belly breathing. And so we're going to go ahead and play that so you guys can see what that sort of looks like and how you can practice that on your own.
Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jo and Mr. Bear, and today I'm going to show you 2 simple breathing techniques to relieve stress. So let's get started. Disclaimer alert, disclaimer alert. Before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure and click the subscribe button and make your subscription either public or let me know that you subscribe, because I always try and respond to my subscribers. So for the first breathing exercise or technique, this one is really great. It's nice because it helps relieve stress, it helps relieve anxiety. They actually use it in the military for special ops missions to help relax the military folks before they go into battle or things that will get them really stressed out and anxious. So this is just either called box breathing or square breathing. And it's kind of like it sounds. You have to use a little bit of imagery with this. So even if you have to look at something that's a box, sometimes that helps with your breathing technique. But it's really simple. And so all you're going to do is you're breathing in for 4 seconds. Imagine you're going up the square. Then you're going to hold your breath for 4 seconds. Then you're going to breathe out for 4 seconds. And then you're going to hold your breath again for 4 seconds. So you're really just making that square with that 4 seconds, breathing in, holding it, breathing out, and then holding it again. So this one, if you feel like you're going to pass out, don't keep holding your breath, but it's 4 seconds, so it should be pretty doable. So I'm going to count for you instead of actually holding my breath, just so you can do it. This is great because, again, it's nice and it helps you relax. You can do maybe 4 to 5 sets at a time, just to kind of help get you relaxed. So get in a nice, good, comfortable position so you can really get that breath breathing in. So let's start here. And again, even if you have to make the image with your finger, or if you use your eyes somewhere like a photo or a painting on the wall or something, make sure that you're using that imagery as well, because that helps you relax. So let's start here in the corner. So we're going to go up, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then breathe in again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold your breath again, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, mine's usually the hardest is after you breathe out and then you're trying to hold your breath. But again, once you do more, you'll start feeling that you have more strength in your lungs to do it and hold it pretty easily. So again, maybe 4 to 5 times. It just depends on how stressed out you are. A lot of times, even like if you're going to the doctors or something, you get a little anxious with that. If you do some of that in the waiting room, that'll help you kind of relax and calm down. So it's a really nice technique to use almost anywhere, but especially when you have a lot of stress or anxiety. So the next breathing technique is going to be when you're breathing out with pursed lips. And what pursed lips do is it makes your lungs work harder because the opening is smaller. So again, don't keep going if you're feeling like you're passing out. Maybe do less seconds for it, but really try and build up to it. It's going to help your lungs get stronger. It's going to help relieve your stress and your anxiety and just kind of help relax you in general. So for this one, what you're going to do is you're going to do some belly breathing or the diaphragmatic breathing. And that's really just breathing in through your belly instead of through your chest. And sometimes it's hard to get that down, but if you put your hand on your belly, you can feel it go in and out, and that's a good way to get that belly breathing. So you're going to breathe in through your belly for 4 seconds, and then you're going to purse your lips and breathe out for 8 seconds. So again, I'm going to count for you so you can do it along with me if you want to, instead of actually doing the technique itself. But I'll kind of start with my pursed lips for you just so you can kind of remember to do that. So let's start again. And again with this, you can do it anywhere from 3 to 5 reps just to kind of get you nice and relaxed. So if you want to put your hand on your belly, you can. And so you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Purse your lips and breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you can see that's a little bit longer than you would think. So I will do it once just so you can see. If you can't get all the way to that 8 seconds, that's okay. But the more you do, I think the easier it'll be. So breathe in. And you can make those noises while you do it too. So that was 8 seconds. And so if you can blow the whole time like me, that's great. But if you can't, that's okay too. Try and get to 6. Next time, try and get to 7. Next time, try and get to 8 seconds. But again, both of these breathing techniques, you don't have to do them back to back because sometimes it might make you feel a little bit lightheaded if you haven't done this for a while. Again, don't go until you feel like you're going to pass out or anything. This is really supposed to kind of help relieve the stress, relieve that anxiety, and just help you relax in general. So there you have it. That was 2 simple breathing techniques to relieve stress. If you'd like to help support my channel.
Okay. All right, so a quick summary of what we discussed today. And thank you to Dr. Jo and her video. She is a doctor of physical therapy, just in case anybody wanted to know. So now we know after this presentation that stress is our body's response to a situation or event. It can be physical, emotional, or a mental stressor. And we know that stress can in fact be positive. It's that eustress. Eustress has that optimal performance level. We like that, but it can also be negative. So too much stress, too much emotional exertion or physical exertion can lead to burnout. It can lead to us having a breakdown, not very motivational at all. Some common stressors include, but are not limited to, family, work, environment, and finances. And Taylor talked about some of the unhealthy ways in which we sometimes can cope, right? We might overeat or undereat. We might sleep for too long or sleep for too little. We might engage in alcohol or substance use, and we might procrastinate at times. Some common stress relieving techniques. The video from Dr. Jo, she showed us deep breathing techniques. So the boxed breathing and also the diaphragmatic, or also known as the belly breathing. Exercise, it can be something light or something a little bit more that you're able to do. And mindfulness, so being in that present moment, listening to some calming music just to kind of put your mind at ease and really be in that moment. Oops, let me go back. All right. Taylor, do you want me to take this? Or you want to? Okay, I'll take it. So as we mentioned at the beginning, Taylor and I are both master's level clinicians, therapists at the Village of Hoffman Estates. And we wanted also to provide a couple of information for everyone here today with us. So the Village of Hoffman Estates, our Department of Health and Human Services, we offer various services for the community. So one of them being mental health services. We provide counseling for anyone of any age. So for all ages, we have individual counseling, couples counseling, family counseling. We do also do psychological testing. Unfortunately, right now, because of COVID, we are not doing those at the moment. As far as medical, we do have our clinic. So we do immunizations and screenings. We have drop off and recycle unused medications. And for questions or to get more information, you can definitely call our main office. The phone number is down at the bottom. And we also provided the link to the main website of the Department of Health and Human Services. So if there's anything, feel free to always reach out. And also, I just want to end with some additional resources that we might have not really touched on. So as far as computer or phone apps, or even if you have a tablet, there are many applications that you can download to kind of help you with either mindfulness or tracking your sleep. So there's the Sleep Cycle app that you can kind of track your patterns. There's also the Calm app to kind of help you relax and meditate, and just like some calming background noise to kind of help you fall asleep quicker. There's also another app called Let's Meditate. There's so many that are available. Other resources is a sleep diary. So down here at the bottom, it might be a little bit small for everyone to see, but it's just pretty much a little journal where you can track your sleeping patterns if it's easier to do it on paper versus on your phone. And also engage in some self-care. I know Taylor mentioned a couple of different things that are useful to engage in. So have a nice warm bubble bath, do some aromatherapy. If you have a little diffuser, put in some oils and just let it run. Breathe in that nice aroma. Guided meditation, or anything like Dr. Joe mentioned in her video. And also make it a priority. You deserve it. You should have definitely some time for yourself to engage in that self-care. So if anything, set aside 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you can every day, a couple of days of the week. If you can do it for every day, that's great. If not, do as much as you can. But set aside that time for yourself because you deserve it. You deserve some stress-free time. So try it out. And with that, so we will end. If there's any questions, I believe there was like a chat function or anything, but thank you again for letting us present some stress management strategies. I know Taylor and I are both very excited, so thank you again.
Definitely. Thank you both for being here. If we have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and I can ask those aloud. Yeah, I definitely think this was helpful to me, at least, with everything going on with the pandemic, and it's helpful to just kind of remind yourself of those tips and tricks for staying calm, cool, and collected.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. There we go.
Yeah, and YouTube is another great source. So like you saw, we got our videos off of there. You can type in some of the top points that we talked about today. So like the relaxation techniques or those breathing. There's so many different kinds out there that you could find one that definitely fits for you. I know for some, they like the soothing sounds. There are some that are like 4 hours long of soothing sounds. So there's a whole lot out there if you go looking for it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I will say something that I forgot to mention. So in some of those apps, typically, I think I want to say maybe the majority are free. But of course, with any app, there's always, those in-app purchases that you can do. But I would assume that like the majority have like the basic, things that you can do for free, in case that was something also that people wanted to know.
Definitely. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but I do want to thank you both for a wealth of information this evening, and we hope to have you back again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Annie, and thank you to Schaumburg Library for allowing us to do this presentation for everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That was so helpful. Right. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.